everyone. On April 13th, there's going to be an exact to-the-minute conjunction between TNO, or actually ETNO, Alicanto, and the North Node. What is Alicanto and what is ETNO, or extreme TNO? I'm going to show you. For this, I prepared a PowerPoint for you. So that's the exact date on the 13th. And this is Alicanto, which is a mythical bird. It comes from Chilean mythology. And the object has been was discovered sometime in 2004, but it was only named in 2021. So it actually took quite a few years before it got a name. And the moment something gets a name, it receives a destiny. There are two stages here, really. The first stage is whether or not you are going to spot something. According to psychology, you are only able to spot something if you are actually able to understand its concept. As long as you don't have it in your psyche or in your knowledge, you're not going to spot it. Even if it's right before your eyes, you won't see it. So there's the first stage is whether or not you're going to see something. And the moment you are seeing it, you can say that, okay, fine, now I'm ready to understand it. You may not understand it, but at least your psyche can incorporate the concept. And then the second stage is the naming, to find an appropriate name for something. Think about naming a baby, think about naming a dog or another pet. It's important. By giving it a name, you give it a destiny. And if we use mythology, and we use mythology for TNO, naming TNOs, we actually use creation mythology for TNOs, then it's an even bigger destiny, because it's not something that everyone gets, like John or Jill or something, but once in a lifetime, unique energy pattern. And this is what happened to this particular celestial object. Now let's take a look at the solar system very briefly. I'm sure you are familiar with this. Here's the sun. Here are the inner tiny planets, Mercury, Venus, our Earth, and Mars. And then you have the asteroid belt. This used to be a planet, but it got demolished during the Vela cataclysm in about 12,000 years ago. And it really separates the personal planets from the so-called destiny planets, the two remaining visible planets, Jupiter and Saturn. And then come the two invisible planets, Uranus and Neptune. And then you have another region, another belt, which is called, sorry, the Kuiper belt. It was named after Jan Kuiper, who was a German astronomer who surmised or hypothesized that there should be such a region, like similar to the asteroid belt, but much larger. And he wrote about this sometime in 1958. And when Pluto was discovered, quite later on, they realized that, yes, there must be such a region. So, okay. Here is the Kuiper belt. You can see that this is the inner solar system. This is Neptune's orbit. Pluto is reaching inside Neptune's orbit. So this is the first celestial object that does this sort of behavior. Actually, which shows that Pluto already is not a planet. It's actually a centaur or a TNO, or you can label it in other ways. In comic astrology, whatever is past the Neptune's orbit, we just call it centaurs, because it's easier to remember. But of course, we know whether it's a TNO or an SDO or whatever. But you can see that Pluto behaves in a different way. It doesn't have a separate orbit, a separate territory. It reaches into Neptune's territory. So, and after that, you see the Kuiper belt, which actually has the following structure. There's an inner Kuiper belt. That is where the true centaurs are orbiting. Then there's the outer Kuiper belt, which are the TNO region, trans-Neptunian objects. And then there's the scatter disk, which is even bigger. And then you have the Oort cloud. So at the moment, the perimeter of the Oort cloud is about 1 light year. There are 2 ways to measure distance in space. One is used usually for objects within the solar system. It is the so-called astrological unit, AU. 1 astrological unit is the average distance between the sun and the earth, which is approximately 150 million kilometers. That's 1 astronomical unit. And the Kuiper belt, the inner Kuiper belt, is about 25 to 30 astronomical units, and the outer Kuiper belt could be 1,000 astronomical units. Well, the other measurement, of course, is light years, but we usually use light years for outer space and not within the solar system. Okay, let's take a look at Alicanto and Alicanto's orbit. So this is an extreme trans-Neptunian object. It is extreme because it has a huge orbital period. All these extreme trans-Neptunians have really, really long orbital periods. You might know Sedna, which has an 11,000 or 12,000 year orbit. Actually, I think it has been surmised first that it's only like 11,000 something. I believe now they say it's 12,500, give it or take a couple of 100 years. And then you may have seen my video on Laila Corona, which has an almost 40,000 years of orbital period. And Alicanto has about 6,000 years. So this is how they look like, actually, these extreme trans-Neptunians. And here are some named objects. Actually, there are 10 of such so-called extreme TNOs or ETNOs. 3 of them are named: Laila Corona, Sedna, and now Alicanto. And this is the distance of 1,000 astrological units. So you can actually, astronomical units, Freudian slip. Okay, so now you can actually calculate these distances. And let's take a look at what Alicanto does compared to the solar system. Here you see the solar system with Neptune's orbit. This is it. And if you are familiar with orbital periods, Neptune's orbit is 165 years. And then this is what Alicanto does. It was discovered by an American astronomer, A.C. Becker. It never gets closer than 47 astrological units to the sun. It averages more than 300 AU. And it has an absolute magnitude of 6.5, which gives a characteristic diameter of approximately 130 to 300 kilometers. So it's a tiny object, it's not big at all, for an assumed albedo. But the albedo could be, actually, what it means is that if it's as bright as usually these objects are, then this is how big it is. But it might be brighter because of the surface. It might be brighter, so they don't know yet. And if it's indeed brighter, so it has a bigger albedo, then the physical body itself could be even smaller. So it's not something big, but certainly not dirty snowballs, as some astrologers call them. Again, if you name something, you give it a destiny, and if it's at a prominent position in your natal chart, you will have this archetype in your psyche. You will have to encounter it. So here are the dates, the relevant dates. We are going to look at these astrological degrees because I'm going to show you how very appropriate the Sabian symbols for these degrees are. So it was discovered on November 16, 2004 at Aries 28 degrees 25. The naming date was May 14th last year in 2021 at Taurus 22 degrees 12. And at perihelion, which means that the closest position to the sun, it occurs at Taurus 2 degrees 43. These are the 3 main relevant degrees for this celestial object. Usually we look at the discovery chart, because it's always relevant. And we usually look at or note the discovery position for each of these transcendental objects, simply because it's going to be a sensitive degree for that particular object, or whenever something occurs to it. Okay, so let's take a look at the legend first. So this is a nocturnal bird from Chilean mythology, and it is the dweller of the Atacama Desert. It feeds on gold, silver, and occasionally copper, so precious ores, and its wings and eyes change their color according to what it eats. When it eats more gold, then it gets more golden, and it constantly shimmers. It's a beautiful bird according to myth. You need to understand that gold is the only metal in our system that is not perishing, that is not deteriorating, that is not corroding. Silver gets black, copper gets green, iron rusts, so they all corrode, but gold remains gold. It's quite interesting that gold is not, it's not possible to create gold on the earth. It's not happening there. You get gold when two galaxies collide. Think about this, it's beautiful. And most languages lost the fact that the ancient people thought that metals are actually the manifestation of lights, of planetary lights. And that's why we signify each important metal to the 7 visible planets. And of course, the sun is gold and the moon is silver, and so on. And in Hungarian, we still have this embedded in our language, because fém means metal and fény means light. So we actually have this correlation. We saved this correlation in our language. So it's very important that this bird eats metal, and whenever it eats too much, it cannot fly because it gets so heavy that it's unable to lift up the earth. It can lead miners and treasure hunters who have a good heart to great riches. That's the according to the myth. But those who are not of good heart are led over to a cliff, and they fall off, of course. This cliff can never be seen because the bird possesses a so-called intensity of darkness, which is a concept very, very similar to Pluto's helmet. Whenever Pluto comes up to from the underworld, he wears an invisible helmet, so it renders him invisible. And this is exactly what the bird does with the cliff. So it has a Plutonic correlation as well. Gold and silver. This is the condensed light of the luminaries. Of course, the gold is linked to the sun and silver is linked to the moon. And this is how the bird shimmers whenever he eats enough gold and silver. I'm going to show you a portion of a Hungarian holy crown. It is a so-called, it's a beautiful object. Google it and you will see many pictures. It's actually in the Hungarian parliament in Budapest. So when you visit Budapest, you can go and take a look at it in person. It's a gold object with beautiful animal pictures. And it is the only so-called initiation crown that is still, that could be still detected. You need to understand something which is not a common knowledge, because about around the Renaissance, they started to depict God as an old man with white beard, and Jesus as a young man with black beard. Now, the funny thing is that if you actually research Christian heritage, you will realize that God manifested itself in a human body, as a human being, only in Jesus Christ. He never actually showed himself in a physical body. So of course, this is the Christian lore. In Jewish tradition, yes, you do have an old guy with white beard and whatever, but in Roman Christian Catholicism, you only have Jesus Christ. You don't have a God figure. It's very important. So here you have the Pantocrator, which means the pan means everything. And creator, that means, someone who creates. So Pantocrator means the creation of everything, the creator of everything. So here, this is how we call this figure here that looks like Jesus Christ. And he is sitting on the throne between the sun and the moon. And the sun is to his left, over his left, his right shoulder. Sorry, I'm a woman. I don't know what's left and right. So this is over his right shoulder, and the moon is over his left shoulder. So this is how it is depicts, of course, the feminine and the masculine sides. It's important because it, again, gives you the sacred marriage, the Hieros Gamos, the sun and the moon, which occurs every new moon, of course. Sorry. Okay, so this is an ore-eating bird, and according to me, actually, I was really researching this in a proper way, and I think the ore-eating bird is really the symbol of personal alchemy. Now, there are two types of alchemy, basically. This is a very big exaggeration or simplification, really, but for you to understand, the Eastern tradition was seeking the elixir of life, and the Western tradition was seeking gold, how to make gold, how to create gold. And as I said, you can't create gold on normal circumstances, under normal circumstances on the earth. Of course, alchemy is different. So yes, in alchemical processes, you could be able to produce both. We know that Saint Germain is a person who never dies, and we also know some alchemists who were able to produce gold. But the true goal of alchemy, really, and if you research alchemy and you read a couple of books, the old books, it will be very understandable and very obvious that the main goal is to bring out the very best in yourself, to transform yourself and bring out what is hidden in your psyche, in your mind, in order to better yourself. And if you want to achieve this, of course, both on the physical and on the mental or spiritual levels, you need to eat accordingly. There's a saying in Hungarian that you become what you eat. And this is very true. That is, when I'm creating this video, we are what we call in Hungarian the Great Week, which is, of course, the week before Easter. And this is a time when it is especially true because there's fasting involved. And whenever you fast, you create a spiritual background in your physical body for what is happening to you. So it's very important what you eat. And this bird eats gold and silver. And so it consumes the energy of the sun and the moon whenever it eats. I'm going to show you two more pictures of the sacred crown. One is St. Paul and the other one is St. Andrew. And if you take a look at these pictures, what you see here, these little tiny symbols, these little crosses, or they look like a four-petaled flower, something like that. These are what we call light seeds. And the whole process of enlightenment means that you should be able to lift up those hidden light seeds in you, to free, to liberate the light in you. And this, you can see this process. This is what's happening on various stages on the Hungarian Holy Crown. And these light seeds are let across two birds. Here, the birds are still separated. So actually, St. Paul is not yet ready, but St. Andrew is already there, and he's already able to liberate the light seeds. And for this, there are birds that are actually helping the process. Now, the bird is always a symbol of air. And of course, air is the element of intellect, of communication, mental capacity, knowledge. Okay, that is all linked to the element of air. And the bird is a symbol of that. So whenever you see a bird in mythology, or any bird becomes important in a tale, a fairy tale, or a folk tale, or in a myth, you can be sure that it is about how you can liberate your intellect, how you can communicate, and how you can actually tell knowledge and actually liberate your knowledge, what is inside you. So that is the process that you can see or detect on the Hungarian crown. Now, let's go back to the Sabian symbols for Alicanto. At its discovery, it was Aries 29 degrees, so it's the 29th degree. The Sabian symbol for that is the celestial choir singing. It's a beautiful symbol. Here you see these gorgeous little paintings. You can see these angels and they are singing, of course. Singing and music is linked to the fifth dimension. It actually elevates you into the fifth dimension. The celestial sphere is already that sphere, and the choir is the vehicle that transports you up there. The key word is veneration. You always have to be at awe whenever you see something that is out of the ordinary, that is linked to the higher dimensions, that is linked to the celestial realms of reality. At its naming, it was at Taurus 23rd degree. The Sabian symbol for that is a jewelry shop. Now, this is a treasure. And the key word is preservation. And I think it's very apt for Alicanto, because this is a bird that eats gold and silver. It eats the metals for the sun and the moon, the two luminaries, the ego development and the spiritual essence in karmic astrology. And preservation means, so the whole degree is linked to preservation when it gets the name. So I think it's very, very telling that in this age, when we finally were able to spot Alicanto and then later on name, we were able to give it a name, it occurred on the precise degree where we need to preserve our valuables, our jewels, our what is worth really. And then at perihelion, closest to the sun, is at Taurus, the 3rd degree of Taurus. And the Sabian symbol for that is steps up to a lawn blooming with clover. Here again is a secret, because steps leading to a lawn, a perfumey blooms on a beautiful meadow or lawn. That's this is something that you would understand only in Hungarian. In Hungarian, the universe, the world, is called világ, and világ can have two meanings already, because it's the universe, the world, but also it means light. Világosság means enlightenment, and virag, which is L and R, are very, very similar. They are actually interchangeable in many languages. Actually, there are some languages that are unable to produce either R or L. Usually R is more difficult, and they utter an L instead. Virag is flower or bloom. So in Hungarian, you have the concept of a blooming flower, which is the creation of the world, which is linked to light. And this is the Sabian symbol for its position closest to the sun. And here the keyword is hopefulness. So I think it's very appropriate. So what is Alicanto in karmic astrology? It denotes soul evolution on the earth plane with the help of celestial qualities. This is what we should strive for. It also is linked to the acceptance of physical life, because we have to be here, but at the same time, it also denotes spiritual transformation through matter, and also the ability to appreciate real values. This comes mainly from the fact that it eats gold and silver, and also the Sabian symbols. It denotes personal alchemy, the processes of personal alchemy. You become what you eat. And we come to a very important concept here. I'm sure you have heard about the so-called breatharianianism, or Inadia. It simply means that it's actually an ancient tradition in the Hindu tradition, or in India. And later on, it became, there was a time, sometime around when the century changed. I mean, around the year 2000, it was very popular in the 90s as well, that you should not eat food, you should only eat light. And you should be able to create your energies, replenish your energies just by light, by the sunshine, so to speak. And of course, I am not questioning the fact that some very enlightened, elevated spirits can do that. But we, not as elevated spirits and more down to earth people, we need real food. So, but at the same time, we can actually come close to this when we only eat green vegetables. And this is what's happening before big religious festivals here in Hungary. Our peasants in the country used to take a 3-day so-called white fasting, and during which they only ate green vegetables. They didn't touch any milk or any cheese or eggs or nothing attached to animals. But they only did it for 3 days because vegetables and also some fruits are filled with chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is light. It's what the plant uses light and turns it into chlorophyll. That's the green color of the plants. So when you actually eat green leaves, you eat light, and that's the original meaning of Inadia, I think, because we otherwise we need food. So don't ever fast for too long, because you will be miserable. Okay, but of course, if you get too much confined in matter, or too much interested in matter, we won't be able to ascend. So that's another lesson of the myth. Potential key phrases for Alicanto: bring up your hidden treasures to the surface. Be moderate in amassing material wealth, because too much will make you earthbound. And the fact that you can surpass your own shadow if you are able to shine alone without the help of others. This comes from the fact that the bird doesn't actually show herself. And when the treasure hunters spotted the bird, they were led to the cliff. So, and here is Alicanto on the 13th of April. It's exactly conjunct the North Node in Taurus, and the dissolved karmic cage was in the previous video, because we still have the exact Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which was exact to the minute on the 12th. And so this is the karmic cage with Saturn, and it is dissolved by the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, but also by the Pallas Athena-Sun-Aries conjunction. So that's the space-time moment when it becomes exactly conjunct the North Node, which is your karmic intent. Pallas Athena is wisdom. Aries is creation through dissection. The sun illuminates and energizes both archetypes. The Jupiter-Neptune conjunction could be described by a big hope for dreams, or a belief, a strong belief and enthusiasm in anything esoteric. And of course, Saturn is the lord of karma, and actually it helps us to decide whether we should continue doing our old stuff, the South Node, or we are actually going towards our destiny, which is the North Node, the new stuff, which is now conjunct Alicanto. So how could we interpret this moment in space-time? It means that we are at a crossroads. We, humanity, are at a crossroads. Either we are able to accept that we are earthbound at the moment, that our soul is encapsulated in this physical body. This physical body has needs. the powers that be did everything to scare us, to scare the crap out of us, really, for the last 2.5 to 3 years, with the pandemic stuff and with the jabs and whatever. And the people said it's enough. And they are slowly awakening that we don't need this, and leave us alone. If there's a saying that my body, my choice, think about it. How come I'm forced to take a jab that I don't want to take? It's my body, so it should be my choice, right? Anyhow, so this plan kind of failed because they couldn't scare us into submission. Now they have a different tactic. What they try to do is they are raising the prices up to skyrocketing, really. There's going to be a food shortage, there's going to be a fuel shortage, whatever, because that is the one way to impoverish the people and again beat them into submission. The North Node Alicanto conjunction is a moment in time when you can decide whether or not you are going to accept your destiny. And for that, the fact that you are earthbound, but also the fact that you have the two luminaries shining in you. And yes, you are gold and silver as well, because you have your sun and the moon. And whether you are able to make choices on the long run for yourself and for your loved ones. This is it. Happy Easter, everyone, if you celebrating it. If not, just have fun and chill and be happy under the sun and in nature. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.